Now we're going to have Veronica Villalobos.
Perfect.
Okay, I'm learning. Who is the Senior Executive Service, well, she was appointed to the Senior Executive Service and currently holds the position of Director of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion with the U.S. Office of Personnel. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm not sure if I belong on this very distinguished panel, but I hope I can kind of put a little different piece on it. We're looking at it from the federal sector perspective, right? We're looking at federal agencies. We have about 2 million employees in the federal government, and if you add the Postal Service, that increases it quite a bit. When we talk about Office of Personnel Management, though, we don't have jurisdiction over the Postal Service, so we're just talking 2 million at this point. What we're wanting to do is create a federal workforce that looks like the people we serve. And when we talk about this, everyone nods their heads, because how obvious is that, right? We should be looking like the communities that we're reaching out to, that we're working with, that we're writing policies that will affect those communities. It's funny, though, when we first started talking about diversity and inclusion, people thought our job was harder when it came to creating the business case. Because we don't have, it's not a dollar question. It's not, are we serving, are we getting that piece of the market? It's just, they say, oh, it's about doing what's right. That's not as attractive. Well, I think it's about more than doing what's right. It is about serving all the people and serving them fairly and understanding those communities. We do think that there are unique roles between diversity and inclusion and EEO, affirmative employment, as we call it in the federal sector, affirmative action. And the reason we think it's important that there be different roles is we want to make sure that the work of affirmative employment is not diminished. We think it's incredibly important, and it has to continue, and is the key place where everything starts when it comes to diversity and inclusion. It is the measuring stick that we need to use. Diversity and inclusion is broader. It's about creating a workforce where not only do we consider diversity, but we look at the whole employee. We manage employees such that they feel valued. I ask people, think of that one job. I say first because it's one of my first jobs fell in this category. And you really liked it. We've all had that one job where you like going to work, where you wake up in the morning and you think, I can't wait to get in. I have these 3 things I have to do immediately when I walk through the door. And you look forward to working with your colleagues. They're not just those employees who get on your nerves, who keep pulling on you, who start another fire. They're your colleagues, and you look forward to going to work every day. And what I tell folks is what we're trying to do is make sure that we create a government that looks like the people that it serves, and that those employees, when they come through the door, remember it like it's the best job they've ever had. And that's how we're looking at this issue. We know that, based on research we've done, the best way we can accomplish this in any organization is to have 3 distinct entities that work on these issues together in collaboration, but understanding that their work is separate and distinct, and that is, you have your human capital folks, but they have to be on board with this. They have to know what's expected to make sure that they're following good hiring practices, they're following good promotional practices, they're following strong award practices, that equity and fairness is dispersed throughout all of their activities. You have a strong EEO program that is monitoring compliance with the statutes, with the regulations, and ensuring that barriers are being studied and carefully removed, for lack of a better way to say it, right? And policies are in place to remove those barriers, and that's an important separate portion of it. And then thirdly, the Diversity and Inclusion Office, where you have someone who is trying to help their staff, help the entire agency create an inclusive workplace. I don't know if you all have heard of the Netter principles, but just to give you the top 6, because there's about 12 of them, it's demonstrated commitment to diversity, holistic view of employees, access to opportunity, accommodation of diverse physical and developmental abilities, 360 communication and information sharing, equitable systems of recognition and reward. It's all those fundamental principles that are just good management. And you wouldn't think that we'd have to create an entire separate entity to make sure that these are followed for all employees, and yet somehow that's where organizations are right now. And we're hoping that we can be part of this process, and that in the government we can serve as a leader in certain areas. I can tell you it's interesting, when we talk to people about diversity and inclusion, almost always they think it's the same thing as affirmative action, and they only think that we're measuring the people who are in our workplace. They don't realize we're not only worried about measuring them, but we want to make sure everybody has that opportunity to a fair workplace, a place where they feel valued, a place where they too can receive promotions if they're able to, if that's something they want, not able to, really something they want. I remind everyone that no matter who we are, when we're in the workplace, we want to just be remembered as a separate individual too. And people start talking differently about it when they think about it in those terms. It's kind of dry. I know it's the way we kind of deal with things in government. We study them to death. We have lots of panels and councils, and we come up with lists. But the idea behind it being that we would have a strategic plan, that we would be able to kind of filter throughout all the agencies, because consider there's 200 separate agencies. So you have 200 different leaders at these agencies thinking about how they should make this work in their work environment. And of course, all the scientists think they're very different than all the law enforcement, who think they're very different from, you know, all those HR folks at OPM, and so on and so forth. So we're trying to be flexible with it, but to infuse it with these principles. And I look forward to talking with you more as we keep going.
Thank you so very much. No, not yet. So I had to come off of the stage and go down to this next panelist and give him a hug. Because, you know, and I've learned he and I have an intimate relationship, and we just met each other today. Before today, he didn't even know my name. I have thrown more shoes at my TV. I have said, he said, what? Did the remote, then I turned it back on. And then I started to listen. And I was surprised that there are so many issues where this brother and I agree more so than disagree. It's called listening. But when I really connected with him is when he said to me, as he stood up, gave me a nice hug, and he said, I'm here to learn. That was exciting to me. Mr. Williams is probably, and it says, the most recognizable conservative voice out of Washington, D.C. He's been on the trail for a very long time. Has his own company. You can turn the channel on almost any time and see his face and hear his voice. And the thing I love about him is he doesn't care if he's in an audience like this or an audience that looks totally different from this room. He speaks what's on his mind and what he truly believes. So we're going to turn it over now to our dear brother, Armstrong Williams.
Thank you. And I want to thank Shirley Wilcher. Really, it's the reason I'm here today. I have such respect for her. What a anchor in this country. And of course, Mr. Gregory Chambers, that I've known for a long time. You know, I want to tell you, I voted for President Barack Obama. And I voted for him because, given the significance of the history, there's no way that I could vote against him. Went against probably everything I believed in, what he advocated, but it didn't matter, because he doesn't affect my pocketbook no matter who's in the White House. So it doesn't matter to me. I voted for him, and I don't regret it. But one thing that we must recognize in the election of President Barack Obama, it is the crowning achievement of the civil rights movement, the election of President Barack Obama. And there are those in this country who will believe that once he was elected, a lot of this talk about race and affirmative action and diversity, America's race problem is over. It is over. And you have to understand the impact and the significance of that. And when I was hearing the brother, and I do like to listen, when he was talking about your frustration and your angst where you are, it's not just because of what got us to this place. You understand that we have a president that does not embrace affirmative action and does not put heat to the fire to enforce it. It has nothing to do with black or white. It's not where his heart is. And if he were any other president, there would be far more talk about the issues that affect your community and your issues, but you don't, because why? You're crippled in doing so, because he is a black man. And so that is a whole different paradigm that you have to deal with when you talk about affirmative action. In fact, some of you will say it has gotten worse, but you won't cry it out. You won't shout it to the mountaintop. It's a whispering campaign, because he's your brother, and you cannot speak out against a family member. But the bottom line is, affirmative action is on life support, and its vital signs are very weak. And I think it has little chance of surviving. I'll tell you why. Because it has not been enforced in a mighty long time. You know it. You're there. You see it. Your frustrations, I understand. Now, and you know, I don't advocate affirmative action, but you know, anytime you can find someone employment, a better way of life, that you're helping somebody, because you feel good about what you do when you go to work. But the issue lies here is that, unfortunately, while affirmative action may have gotten many blacks into the middle class, and I don't think many of us will argue against that, there would be no middle class of black Americans were it not for affirmative action. But the true beneficiaries of affirmative action were not those that it was set up for in the first place. If you look at broadcast TV, you look at the Supreme Court, you look at the United States Senate, you look at the Congress, and what do you see are the true beneficiaries? White women. But that's a silent campaign, because those are your sisters. And you can't criticize them because you're in bed together. You think you're fighting the same cause. But I'm telling you, their cause is not your cause. Oh, don't want to talk about it. Gotta whisper it. Can't talk about it. Their cause is not your cause. So there are many things that are crippling your fight with affirmative action, because the people you decide to get in bed with don't necessarily have your interests at the end of the week. They may have it on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but Thursday and Friday, the ball game changes. And you lose at the end of the week. And come Monday, you regroup again. So while you sit and talk about the realities of affirmative action, the reality is, as you sit out there, you know why it's on life support. You know why it's not working. Because your friend is not always your friend. As long as it benefits them, and it doesn't interrupt or disrupt the apple cart and everybody is looking door, but once it crossed their political agenda and their alliances, they throw you to the wolves. It's the truth. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the real problem with affirmative action.